Update on the military situation in Ukraine. Today's newsletter includes the following topics. Horror as Russia issues doomsday threat if Ukrainian troops attempt to retake Crimea. Putin humiliated as Russians shoot down their own Su-34 bomber in Ukraine. Ukraine nuclear mystery. Russian troops drop dead at seized plant in unexplained incident. Putin faces increasingly acute a crisis as Russian army ravaged by a severe shortages. Welcome to BRF Report channel. Breaking news, Factual reports. Here are the details.
Horror as Russia issues doomsday threat if Ukrainian troops attempt to retake Crimea. Russia has issued a doomsday threat to Kyiv if Ukrainian troops attempt to retake Crimea, a report suggests. A former Russian president appeared to warn that Ukraine could face yet another onslaught if they attempted to reclaim the contested region. Dmitry Medvedev, who served as president from 2008 to 2012, made the remarks during a meeting with a group of Second World War veterans, the deputy head of Russia's Security Council said, trying to snap back. And some exalted bloody clowns who pop up there periodically with some statements, are trying to threaten us, I mean an attack on Crimea, and so on. He added, the consequences are obvious that if something like this happens, there would be a doomsday for all of them there, very fast and hard. Crimea was annexed by the Kremlin back in 2014. Nations around the world condemned Vladimir Putin for the annexation. Ex-Foreign Secretary William Hague even said at the time, this action is a potentially grave threat to the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine. We condemn any act of aggression against Ukraine. However, according to the Times, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sacked his security service chief and prosecutor general amid 60 treason cases. The news comes after the Ministry of Defense warned that Putin's troops have been reinforcing their defensive positions. The MOD said, Russia is reinforcing its defensive positions across the occupied areas of the south of Ukraine. This includes the movement of manpower, equipment and defensive stores between Mariupol and Zaporizhia, and in Kherson. Russian forces in Melitopol are also increasing security measures. They added, Ukrainian forces have been applying pressure on the Russian defensive line in Kherson Oblast for over a month now, and recent political statements from both Zelensky and the deputy prime minister have warned of forthcoming offensive operations to force Russia out of the areas it currently controls. Russian defensive moves are likely a response to anticipated Ukrainian offensives, to demands made by Defense Minister Shoigu on a recent visit to the Donbass, and also to the attacks Ukraine is launching against command posts, logistic nodes, and troop concentrations. Given the pressures on Russian manpower, the reinforcement of the south whilst the fight for the Donbass continues likely indicates the seriousness with which Russian commanders view the threat.
Putin humiliated as Russians shoot down their own Su-34 bomber in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin's forces shot their own Su-34 bomber down during fighting in Ukraine's eastern Luhansk region, according to reports. Ukrainian media on Monday reported a $36 million Russian strike aircraft had accidentally been downed by Putin's military, with footage shared by the Strategic Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram appearing to show its destroyed remains. The jet was said to have been downed near Alchevsk, a city in the Luhansk region, one of the areas the war is currently focused on. The cameraman of the video shared on Telegram can be heard saying a Ukrainian plane had been shot down. However, an inscription on the military plane states it belongs to Russia's Air Force, local news outlets clarified. Ukraine's Dialogue.ua reported, Russian invaders from the air defense shot down their own plane, which was flying in the sky over Alchevsk. It added that it could have happened on Sunday, when Kyiv launched a targeted attack on military depots in the occupied city of Alchevsk, approximately 45 kilometers from the Luhansk Oblast capital. According to national outlet Glavrid, a video of the downed jet was published on local Telegram channels, and Russians at first commented on the posts believing the plane in question was Ukrainian. Then, after it became clear it was a Russian bomber, the footage was reportedly deleted from the messaging app. The Sukhoi Su-34 is a Soviet-origin Russian twin-engine, twin-seat, all-weather supersonic medium-range bomber. It first flew in 1990, intended for the Soviet Air Forces, before entering service in 2014 with the Russian Air Force. Alchevsk, currently under the occupation of Moscow-backed separatist forces, has seen further attacks by Ukrainians. According to the rebels, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, rockets provided to Ukraine by Washington killed 2 civilians and damaged a bus depot and several other buildings in the city over the weekend. Ukraine's armed forces said they struck the bus depot because they had information it was being used to house Russian troops. Ukrainian officials say new US-made HIMARS they began receiving last month allow them to reach targets in Crimea, which was annexed by Russia in 2014, and other areas occupied by Russia. Andriy Yermak, chief of staff to Ukraine's president, on Sunday published a video showing a large explosion which he said was another destroyed Russian ammunition depot in southern Ukraine.
Ukraine nuclear mystery. Russian troops drop dead at seized plant in unexplained incident. Russian troops have mysteriously dropped dead or have been injured in an unexplained incident at the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Soldiers were so scared that they ran around in a panic with a handful now in intensive care, according to Dmytro Orlov, the mayor of Enerhoda where the power plant is located. The circumstances behind the mass hysteria are baffling, although Vladimir Putin's men had been using the location to store several weapons, including missile systems. Mayor Orlov said 9 soldiers had been rushed to a local hospital with different degrees of severity. He also confirmed some have died but would not elaborate further on that detail. The mayor said, one of them was brought in a serious condition and has been put in intensive care. Some have died but we cannot name their exact number at the moment, Mr. Orlov added. They were so frightened that they ran around the territory of the station in a panic and blocked 2 shifts of operational personnel at the plant for a very long time instead of changing shifts as they were supposed to. On Friday, the head of Ukrainian nuclear agency Energoatom had warned the situation inside the nuclear power plant had turned extremely tense, with up to 500 Russian soldiers controlling it. Petro Koting said, the occupiers bring their machinery there, including missile systems, from which they already shell the other side of the river Dnipro and the territory of Nikopol. They physically control the perimeter. The occupiers' heavy machinery and trucks with weapons and explosives remain on the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The power plant, which creates around a fifth of Ukraine's entire electricity, was taken over by Russian troops on March 4, less than 2 weeks after the war began. The opposition forces have since expanded their influence and now control the administrative buildings and station. But the mysterious deaths at the nuclear power station will no doubt inflict yet another blow to Putin's struggling war efforts in Ukraine. Some 50,000 Russian troops are so far believed dead, wounded or captured in the conflict, including dozens of high-ranking personnel with close links to the president. It has got so desperate that the Kremlin has contracted mercenary firm the Wagner Group to supply soldiers.
Putin faces increasingly acute a crisis as Russian army ravaged by a severe shortages. Russia faces an increasingly acute struggle to maintain its military capabilities in Ukraine, the UK's latest intelligence briefing says. In an update issued online today, analysts at Defense Intelligence claim the Kremlin's war planners are grappling with a severe lack of manpower as well as a dilemma over sending troops to Ukraine's Donbass region or defending against Ukrainian counterattacks. It comes as former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev claimed Russia will prevail in Ukraine and set the terms for a future peace deal with Kiev. Defense Intelligence said in its statement, Russia has struggled to sustain effective offensive combat power since the start of the invasion, and this problem is likely becoming increasingly acute, as well as dealing with severe undermanning. Russian planners face a dilemma between deploying reserves to the Donbass or defending against Ukrainian counterattacks in the southwestern Kherson sector. It added Moscow's immediate aim is to seize all of the 26,517 square kilometers Donetsk regions of East Ukraine. Defense Intelligence said Moscow continues to commit 6 separate armies to its offensive in the Donbass region, made up of the breakaway Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. Lawyers and rights groups recently said more Russian men are trying to avoid military service since Putin launched the war in Ukraine. Some are fleeing the country while others are trying to get exemptions or ignoring summonses. Military service is mandatory for men aged 18 to 27 in Russia. Draft dodging can risk up to 2 years in prison or fines. If the Russian army cannot recruit enough soldiers, Putin's options would include using conscripts, mobilizing Russian society, or scaling back his military ambitions. Putin has repeatedly said conscripts should not fight in the conflict, although Russia's defense ministry reported in March some already have. A military prosecutor told Russia's upper house of parliament in June that about 600 conscripts had been drawn into the conflict and around a dozen officers had been disciplined over it. Legal advice group release is co-run by Dmitry Lutsenko. He said membership of a Telegram group for those seeking advice on avoiding conscription has increased to more than 1,000 people, up from about 200 before the conflict.